What up, and welcome to another episode of Water for the Thirsty, the word simply, the word refreshing. I'm the facilitator of the conversation. My name is Jared, and with me tonight we have Jerome, Courtney, and Lorraine, who will join us on camera in a little bit. We're here to chop it up a little bit about the Bible readings that we've been participating in. Since the last time we were here, we started over Luke, and we let's see, we closed out Peter, prophecies of Jeremiah. We kicked off Daniel, and we've been navigating the book of Psalms. So our conversations are going to come from there. But I am going to kick us off with a question coming out of Luke. So it was just a small musing. There's nothing deep or elaborated. Just something. I never thought about that. So I'm going to throw it at you guys and see what you think. Coming out of Luke chapter 2, verse 8 to 20. Courtney, I'm going to let you read all of it since you're here today. So we can advertise our voice a little bit more.
Yes.
Let's just put in all that good work. Luke chapter 2, verses 8 to 20.
Sorry.
Any version
Preference of version? Okay. All right. So let me see. I have all right. NIV 8 to 20. All right. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly hosts appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was laying in the manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds had said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told.
That's it. My question is, why did the angels appear to the shepherds? What was the significance of the shepherds? Is there a significance, or were they the only ones up and about at that time? The angels seem to come and make a real big deal about this, right? They're really excited. This thing has happened, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we gotta go and reveal this to the humans." I mean, the whole choir come and sing and show up and reveal their majesty, like they come out of hiding and put on this big display. But they come on the display to some shepherds, and I was just curious as to, if you had to make this big display, wouldn't it do something bigger and more fancy so that more people would be aware? Why the shepherds? Is there significance to the shepherds, or is it that time of night the only people that really could have come to were shepherds or other? And I was just musing about that. There's probably nothing. Maybe there's some spiritual significance to the shepherds, but I was curious if anybody had any thoughts around that.
Question: When Jesus shared with the disciples, all of the prophecies concerning him. All the disciples, I think he even did it in the temple, right? He was talking about all the things that
would come. Yeah, he said, "Look at the temple."
Right.
Right? He went in.
So I'm just wondering if that's anywhere, like you said, there's a spiritual significance in terms of something prophetic that mentioned them. I don't know, because it does seem kind of random. It's like,
of all the people, this important moment that you show up to tell somebody about what's going on.
Yeah. Not like, the priest, the whoever, he was just like shepherds chilling. Okay.
Some shepherds nearby. Like,
Yeah.
oh, we gotta tell somebody. Oh, the shepherds. I was just curious if there's, because sometimes when you read these stories, there's significance that people elicit from, you know, the shepherds had some meaning or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. I'm as you're talking about it, I'm wondering if the shepherds, if it had to do something with their like classism, like social class, why they chose to tell them, um, and or are these shepherds? I guess I'm just adding more questions. Like, are these shepherds significant in maybe the area that they and or the lambs that they're looking after? If they were a different type of lamb in that area, I don't know. Like,
Well, maybe we over spiritualizing it, Courtney. maybe these guys were the only ones out there.
at that time, right?
I mean,
Right.
middle of the night, who else would you tell, right? You're gonna wake up somebody from the bed, who's gonna see it outside? Unless you're going
Right.
inside.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
only other people who come by that night is the wise men, right? And they hadn't seen and heard from before and came all this way.
all right. I'm trying to think about the story, like the way it was presented to me when we were younger. Maybe not even how I read it, but all right. All these people are coming in to this town, and there's no space for them. So they got. I don't know how far the stable is from the rest of
From
the
the town
hotels and all
center.
that. Yeah, right. So that's something else. I'm like, yeah, there's a bunch of people in town supposedly. So why
That's
just
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not like the angel went in the town square and made some
Right.
proclamation.
Right.
And maybe, to be fair, it was trying to tell people, but also keep it low key. Because remember, and I'm just now thinking about this out loud to myself. Herod the wise men had come and give Herod a heads up, and Herod was like, "Yeah, when you find him, tell me." If the angel had gone in the town center and alert all these people, it would have been a whole spectacle, and they would have been found more easily. And so it might have been a way that they affirmed what was happening for Mary and Joseph by the angels coming to these strangers, inspired the strangers through the shepherds, but also kept it on the low to protect the baby.
Right. So, it's like the shepherds spread the news, but maybe it wasn't as much of, it wouldn't be as grand as an angelic announcement.
Correct. The shepherds told the news, we saw the angels, and now people have to go here see. But imagine if you saw the angels and the angels came and told you, you definitely would go looking, right?
Yeah.
As opposed if you just hear some shepherds and they say, yeah, them was drinking now.
That's true.
But it's interesting that in the social hierarchy of the day, I'm guessing shepherds would be pretty low down the totem pole, right?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting that, which is actually almost like a tradition God started with the lowly, it's tax collectors, is fishermen, is shepherds, it's not. And I'm guessing part of the reason is these learned scholars, these whatever, wouldn't be humble enough to take the message, and even if they receive the message, they would want to embellish it based on their extensive background and their 10 degrees and their whatever else, right? So
no, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Let me ask you one more question as you say that. There was a question I had when I was in the shower, a small tangent, but is there a difference between believing something and knowing something?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Believing is when you're willing to act on it. My opinion. So I could know something is dangerous, theoretically or otherwise. If I'm not willing to act on it, then do I really believe it? The people who know of a God, do they believe him enough to?
Well, let's step away from
Even biblical things.
necessarily belief in God. I was just asking, like I guess I was asking from, if I know something,
Mhm.
I can verify, validate.
Mhm.
Belief can't necessarily be verified, can it?
I think it can, but
And if it
again, if
can
we
be
just go away
verified, it
from
becomes
religious things.
knowledge and not belief, right? Like inherent to belief is uncertainty.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think to some degree, but I mean, it's like, okay, so maybe this is the example. I could know, what the speed limit is that cops are out monitoring it, but if I don't believe I'll get caught breaking the speed limit, I'll do my thing. But if so, I think you see that happen where sometimes if like over the course of a week, you see police presence everywhere, they're constantly monitoring traffic flows. Everybody tends to pipe down and behave, and then as soon as things, ease up a bit.
But that's still a measure of uncertainty. There's no probability and chance. But with knowledge,
Mhm.
I
You
know
think
that.
knowledge should be more factual. So it's like I know if I know, because you'll see that in ways, right, where people will put it in and tell you, hey, police are here, police are there. So if you know it, then why take the chance, right?
But I'm not even talking about the action that comes as a result of belief and knowing. I'm just trying to distinguish between knowing something
Uh-huh.
and believing something.
Yeah, I get you. And the belief will always almost seem to imply there's a degree of uncertainty.
No.
Maybe you can't prove it 100%.
Yeah, knowledge is something I can prove. Belief is something I, yeah, I can't.
Right.
I choose to believe something.
But do you realize how many things we think we know, but it's really just us believing them, right?
I mean, I know water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. I know that. That's
Right.
not belief.
But like you jump on a flight and
That's belief.
there's a
That's definitely belief. I believe I'm
you
going
know
to
there's a
get to my
pilot and you just
destination.
believe he's good, you believe he's sober, you believe he's
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's why they have the little That's why even the airplane, the airline have all these measures to to deal with accidents in advance, because even they are operating on belief. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. In this random, it's not related to
So
what we were
so
just
here's a
talking about.
question that comes from that then. So even in our biblical context, when God says something like you will know the truth and the truth will make you free,
Hmm.
is the truth a knowledge thing that can be proven, or is the truth now that will make you free a belief thing?
I think there's a relationship between knowledge and belief. Um, there's some things that you do know that contribute to belief.
Mhm.
I don't think belief happens absent of knowledge. Um,
But
I
is
think
knowledge a requirement for belief?
knowledge of something is required for belief. And this may not be complete knowledge.
Right.
Um, to believe in anything, you had to know. You had to.
No,
So
something.
let's just take the plain example. You had to know that there have been 100 successful flights, and only one of them in the last 10 years has crashed. That knowledge allows me to believe that it's safe to fly.
Yeah.
Right? Those facts, that data, that provable data. The plane goes up, it comes down. I know Lorraine flew from North Carolina to DC and did it safely. I know that. That's provable. That's a fact. She had the boarding pass to prove it. She had the pictures on the plane, up in the sky, down on the ground. She even videotaped the whole thing. So I know she traveled.
Mm.
She had a belief to travel, but I know she traveled.
So yeah.
My knowledge of her travel allows me to believe that I could fly back with her. So yeah, I believe there's a relationship there between knowledge and belief. And so there's some kind of knowledge that informs belief. But what that means is now the opposite of faith is not doubt, but certainty.
Mm.
Hmm. Mm.
which would explain why Jesus kind of never proved anything beyond reasonable doubt. He gave you enough things to know. I know because I saw with my eyes he raised this man from the dead. Know that for a fact because I see it.
It's like with Doubting Thomas, right? You're blessed if you believe without seeing the
What's
bishop.
up, Bishop?
What it is.
I tangented from my original question. My original question was from Luke 2:8-20. Why did the angels appear to the shepherds? Is there some significance in the shepherds? Or were the shepherds the only people who was out there that hour the night? So and that's who you appear to. You appear to who are wrong. I was just musing about that. It's not a big, salvific issue, but I was wondering about it, so I brought it. While we were talking about that, I tangented to: is there a difference between knowledge and belief? Or, what was the relationship between knowledge and belief?
Knowledge and belief.
Mm-hmm.
One's relative and one's subjective.
Isn't relative and subjective the same thing?
Nope.
Please unpack that for me.
What's the difference between relative and subjective?
Something can be subjective and not relative. Something can be relative and not subjective. I can always have to go.
Isn't it relative because it's subjective?
Not necessarily. Let's look at the fundamental dictionary.com.
Do you mean relative and objective?
Mhm. Something connection with something else. Yeah, that's what I meant there. And then, yeah, that's what I meant. I meant objective and subjective. Just looked it up.
Objective and subjective. That's what I
Wait,
thought.
no, was it objective that I said? Hold
No,
on.
you said relative and subjective, which is
No, I
why
meant relative. I meant relative. There we go.
and
I meant
subjective,
relative.
not objective and subjective.
Mm-mm. That's what I meant. I just looked it up in a dictionary. So when I'm thinking relative, something the definition I looked up here was something dependent on external conditions for specific nature, size, etc. Something that's obsolete or absolute rather. So I feel like in so many ways knowledge can be relative, right? And when I think of subjective, here I'm looking at the pertaining to or characteristic of an individual. It's very personal, very individualistic. And so I think belief is subjective. I can know that something can be possible and has happened in an absolute nature to someone or something. Do I believe it's going to happen to me? Do I believe I'll experience it? That's a subjective nature of it.
Yes. Then we were on the same page. We're just using different words. Okay.
Yeah.
Idea-wise, we landed in the same place. Yeah, that's where I landed. And I was just saying, well, if that's true, then faith, the opposite of faith is certainty, not doubt.
Yeah, we always say, I guess you and I always say that, right? When people say the lack of faith is not belief, that's not true. I think it's faith is subjective. It has to be.
If there's not doubt, there's not faith. Yeah. Because if you know for certain, it's not faith. If you know for certain, it's not faith. Because it's not belief.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we overuse the word faith. Similar to like how we overuse the word trust, right? But yeah, if I have full certainty, then it can't be faith. I have to have some level of blindness, some level of doubt that there's a probability that this might not happen, which is my favorite word, probability.
My God, don't ever answer our prayer straight.
So
Give us all the insight and answer all our questions thoroughly. Right?
what then would you say of like Gideon? God, if this is you, I want this piece of fleece wet and the ground dry.
Mhm.
Next morning, fleece is wet, ground is dry. Okay, God, if it's really you, fleece dry, ground wet. Fleece dry, ground wet. Is it then that because he had that certainty, he wasn't acting in faith?
I don't know if he was fully certain. Would
Or
you
is
say?
it that we could say it was just a weird coincidence that something could be dry on a wet ground or wet on a dry ground?
Yeah, so he couldn't be certain that it was God. He had to take that happened on faith that it was God. There's no way to prove that it was God. That's a faith move. That could really just be, 2,000 years later, there could be some scientific phenomenon that he could duplicate that, right? No, most of us will believe that's impossible. Only a God could do that, right? And we'd be right to believe that. I'm not saying that it's not God. I'm saying there's no way to prove it, to demonstrate it tangibly, as Sharika would say, objectively or relatively. You know,
And,
he had
and
to take that on faith.
I guess to Sharika's point as well, it could it could probably be
It likely
some
is.
unknown
Likelihood.
phenomenon, but the likelihood that it's
That
so
it is.
because there's a probably and you think, okay, that's reasonably, I think this is God, then yeah, there's still
I also
wow.
think the wiser generations, I think we're absolutely stupid at this point. Believed in multiple powers and principalities and things could happen by multiple people, right? Like
Mhm.
and beings. And so and they've seen it. And so it's like, all right, whoa. Possibility. Sure. But I'm gonna need the reverse on this one for whatever reason. And I don't think it was from a disrespectful place to God, because God usually can tell the heart and say, I bet. You really just need a deeper level of assurance, or
You ain't familiar enough, so I had to give you some knowledge so
right.
that you could believe. Some knowledge so you could believe.
And sometimes I gotta do it twice, right? I gotta you know how I feel about doing things twice. But yeah.
So I have a question. Um, should there be certainty when it comes to God, like who He is? Should there be a certainty, or just
You can probably have a certainty to who he is, but not always what he will do.
well, yeah, not the
But
what
I
He
don't
will
know
do.
how
I'm
he
talking
will
about
do it,
who
right?
He is. Because if you're certain about who He is,
How do you become
and that,
certain about
but
that?
that's what I'm asking. Is that even possible to be certain?
So the
Jared,
thing
I
about
almost
certainty is knowledge based on experience and facts.
Mhm.
Experience, I guess, is a fact. It can be a fact, right?
Mhm.
But it's based on information, reliable information, witness testimony, all them kind of thing. However, you're establishing this fact or
Okay.
truth.
Mhm.
So, so what I would say is he has never asked anybody to believe without providing some knowledge
Right.
and some reliable something. Like, for
Mhm.
example, when he asked the children of Israel to believe, he went through 10 set of plagues first that they all lived through and saw.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
So they believed him when they said, come out of the place. And
Mhm.
then they went through the Red Sea and they saw that. And so they know some things about him. There's some things about him. He is powerful beyond anything I know. I know that for a fact. How I know that for a fact? I walked through the Red Sea on dry ground. So I know that. Now, because I know that he is powerful, I believe that now that I'm hungry, he could do something about it. And it may not even be your experience. It could be that My daddy tell me that he did that.
Mhm.
And so I know because my daddy have the stone that he pick up from the river and he kept. Or he had a phone
But
and
the
he
source will have to be
take a
trustworthy.
picture of the wall of water and he put it on Facebook, and I get in the Facebook memories 10 years later, the wall of water.
So I looked up. I'm in my dictionary today, and certain by definition is free from doubt or reservation, confident and sure. I feel like I feel like a relationship with God can be certain,
Yes,
but the existence of God Himself is subjective, depending on who you are.
correct.
Yeah, I could agree with that. If all this knowledge is evidence based, I'm not knowing. I don't think anyone can say that there isn't any evidence. Maybe you don't accept all of the evidence that's presented
But the evidence is not
subjectively.
conclusive.
Yeah, but it might not be conclusive for you.
Right.
But for someone else, they can see something, they can witness some evidence, and they're like, "Oh, that's enough for me."
To
Like
do
for
what?
them
To believe or to know?
to believe, to
Right.
believe. It's like you can know some things, and I feel like other things are just going to generate belief without proof.
And I think God has never held us responsible for us to manage the certainty of Him.
But man channeling is in a Trump.
It's faith,
Childcare is childcare. Faith is
right?
faith.
Master Bruce. All right.
Um, I think He's always said, "I'll take care of the certainty of my existence. You be concerned with our relationship."
Mhm.
Because some people just won't be convinced. Like, and
Yeah.
I you can't blame them, right? I hate to put it that way. No disrespect to Christians out there. I identify as a Christian. You can't blame them, because if you can't repeat it scientifically, it is
How can you know?
simply a theory, huh?
How can you know?
How can you know, right? How would
Well,
I know, right? And you respect someone's position, but like I think as Courtney said, it's enough for me. You know what I'm saying? And so
yeah.
if it works for me, I'm not in a position to convince you
Right.
or to do anything with what you have. It's an experience that you have to go through. Well, my belief in Him is certain, and that's good enough for me.
Ask you this: do you care to have a relationship, or do you invest seriously in relationship if you could know certain things objectively from a distance?
Give an example.
Right.
Well, before I can give an example, let me see if I can clarify what I'm asking. I wonder if the mystery and the lack of abstract concrete facts that prove beyond a shadow of a doubt some things is to facilitate relationship. Because if I know this thing abstractly, I don't necessarily need to interact with it necessarily.
I feel like
Mm,
I came from that place. I knew God existed. I knew He sat high and looked low. It was never up for discussion. Meant absolutely very little to me, but I understood the concept. I understood the sovereign nature of it all. We're not questioning that. I don't know if that's enough to consider it um, certain. Uh, and I would argue even that comment, Batman, truth has to be set. We have to agree on what is truth in order for us to say that it is truth. And the fact is that we don't agree on what's truth. Not a problem. And I think that's where a lot of religious people get lost. And that's where we start dividing and messing ourselves up because we all claim to have the truth. And I'm here to argue yay or nay. Um, but Satan believes in the sovereign nature of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. No one's arguing that. But whether or not there's a relationship there that you can do something about it is up for discussion. So I can know and not acknowledge. And I think there are times we talked about this like a couple weeks ago. I think I know stuff and still do stuff, right? Like you roll the dice. It is what it is. Like it's fine.
I got you. I think I just heard a commercial today, but there as we talking about science, I'm always thinking about the difference between those that believe in evolution and those believe in creation. And like I said, science, if you're going to break down and tell me all of these things, we've done these tests, and this particular thing has to be this, like in terms of how it ages, it has to be this old. And I'm like, all right, I can't say that what you're following this guideline isn't right. But when we're talking about those that believe in creation, we're saying, all right, according to this, God said that he created all of this in this timeline. This is his timeline. But you're going backwards, running all these tests and saying, all right, this has to be this million of years old. I'm not saying that you don't have evidences that say that this isn't however this is aged and this maturity and everything exactly doesn't prove that this has a whatever type of age to it. But I don't think that in the scheme of the whole creation story, I always try to say, like, I don't doubt that God could have created this at this maturity level, like right away. Like as soon as he spoke, it was fully matured. I don't know that those things have to be separate, but they'll say to you, no, what you got, this creation thing doesn't make any sense because all these tests that we ran, we have evidence that this, and I'm just like, oh, hey, that's how my take on that. I'm just thinking, we can look at it. I try to understand people like that. They'll just say, oh, this place has been here for millions of years, and and I'm just looking at it like, okay, you have that test. We have these written words here, and we both have to just say, all right, based on these things, you're choosing what you want to believe based on that stuff. Basically, you weren't there. None of us were there to see ourselves. So it's still a belief thing, even with the tests, even with some of the evidence that we have. Like, you still gotta choose to believe in it.
Belief is always based on evidence.
It's like some evidence, like you said, none of it is like factual.
But there's also a starting point. Like we've argued this before. I believe in evolution and Christianity at the same time, right? I believe they're very much connected, which drives people mad. But I also think, Courtney, you bring up a great point. There's a starting point for everything, right? There's a basis by which you're saying this is ground zero, and I'm building everything off of this basis, right? And so is there a world that this plant was 500 years old at ground zero? Perhaps, I don't know. Is there a world that it was zero? Perhaps, we don't know. Is there a world that set one day was 24 hours versus 24,000 years? Perhaps, I don't know. Right. A question that I have for people is, why does it matter? Right? Like, because we're getting lost in the minutia of things, to your point, that we don't know what ground zero is. But at the end of the day, both parties have valid points by which you can then choose what side you live on and coexist with the people on the other side if necessary. Because the one thing we are all looking at is the plant, right? Like, we're not doubting that the plant is here. If the plant is here, age of the plant, couldn't tell you. Plants here, though.
Well, unless we start to say that the plant identifies as a. But one thing I really like in what you're saying is, well, not one thing. There are a couple things I like. But it's we are making assumptions as to what is ground zero, right?
We all are.
And because like even when the Bible says the earth was without form and void, so was it that there was something here before he created, and that something was millions of years old? We don't know. We don't know.
Right.
And it's funny going back to what we were discussing earlier. The certainty that God is trying to get us to is not a certainty about those things. It's a certainty of relationship with Him.
Right.
Because if you're in a relationship with Him and you're seeing how He's transforming your mind, personality, and character, does it really? How consequential? How critical is it if the plant is the ground zero is 5 or if it's 500?
And,
It's kinda like,
and
Right.
he's giving you evidences to build a case for the thing that he wants you to know and believe.
about Him.
The plant is here. I reach. Okay.
I reach. This is why, like we discussed earlier, this whole Genosco thing.
Mhm.
To know and be fully known is not about the plant, it's about Him.
It's also no,
Just one thing. What's interesting with the whole carbon dating thing? It's carbon 14 that they use that based on how the nucleides deteriorate over time and all of that drama.
Mhm.
They are getting that from. So what they've done is they've looked at, I think the oldest tree is somewhere in Asia, and they look at how much carbon 14 is in that tree.
And that becomes a measurement.
It becomes a measurement. But the jokey thing is they will readily admit that, well, carbon 14 could deteriorate at different rates in different objects
Climates
and in
and-
different, environmental conditions and whatnot. So it's like, well,
with the tree here. The tree
tree
here.
here.
We
Relative
all agree
size
this
in
is the oldest tree.
Planet Poker, a 1 is not really 1 hour. It's just a 1 for us, right?
But then you see, this goes back to one of the other things you said that I really like. Because fundamentally all these things come down to belief.
Mhm.
We are not meant to try to beat anybody over the head, lord superiority over them, or like we're supposed to be able to live amicably. You believe what you want to believe, as long as you don't try to force it on me and vice versa, because it all takes faith.
And I respect the
Faith.
fact that you have a faith. I've always told people the hardest people for me to deal with are atheists, because I don't believe there's such thing as true atheism. Like, you believe in something.
You believe in something.
All right, and so no
Even if
disrespect,
it's yourself.
no
I
disrespect
I
to those
believe that God does not exist. That is
cool
my faith.
belief. Then
That's your faith.
that's right? Like, I always said, it's the hardest thing for me to understand, and maybe I need to sit down with a couple more atheists to really understand what atheism. But everybody believes something. It's just, where are you starting from? I always laugh because, like, my grandmother has 2 birthdays: the one they think she was born and the one the hospital registered her in. Like, like in the West Indies back in the day, when you show up, ground zero. That's what the birth certificate says. Depending on how long you stayed at your house, y'all can figure that out. But if your parent doesn't know you were home for 10 days or 11 days, guess what? Ground zero is when you get to the hospital.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right? Like, but no one's arguing that you're here. You're here.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with this statement.
I definitely disagree. It does not exist to disprove that there's a
I
God.
don't think it seeks to disprove there's a God. I think there are people who use it to
To
do that.
disprove it.
Correct.
Right.
Mhm.
I don't know that science itself does. I think science is a little agnostic to that. I think science is meant to prove whether something can be proven or demonstrated.
Science is about the what and the
Mhm.
why. Humans attach a who to it and allow for it to have some characteristic that it never meant to have. What is this and why is this potentially happen is all that science is
That's
saying.
it. Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's why you have so many renowned scientists who are on both sides of the divide. Some are believers, some are not. And those who believe in terms of Christianity will say, but here's all this evidence. And then those who don't will be like, but
Here's
here's
all this evidence.
Evidence, right? Because it's not here to have a side. It's here to
Yeah.
give you whatever you need for
to
it
give you
do.
information, which
And
will
short-
then-
Sort of him showing up, right, out of the blue in the middle of the night with his angels and saying, "Ha ha! Look at me!
Right.
Look at the picture."
Right.
How are you gonna know for sure?
and this is why outside of all of the, even though the Bible tells you what to do, Jesus is always the example. Because when did you see Jesus going around trying to convince people about who he was? Even when the Pharisees are like, okay, right now,
But that's why he
say
came.
say
But
you're
why he
this
came to
and prove
convince
it. And
people.
he's like, you saying that, I don't need to say anything.
But his whole presence was to prove. was a revelation. His intent in being here was to reveal.
No, I get that, but he didn't. He didn't.
He wasn't
Again,
trying
try
to
to beat
convince.
somebody over the head.
He wasn't trying to convince you.
He's what?
He wasn't trying to convince you.
Right, that's the point.
I am proof that there's a living God. I can't convince you that there's a living God, but I can. I'm here as a piece of science, bruh. Do as you please with what you see.
Yep.
Because people are going to believe whatever they want.
Yeah. Because what was interesting to me is I was looking at a debate the other night, and one of the guys was saying, you can't scientifically prove the resurrection, or the virgin birth is scientifically impossible. But this is also a guy who believes anybody could identify as anybody, and there's 66 genders, and so the host respectfully pointed out, well, we hear what you're saying, right? But there are other things that you're saying you believe that you can't scientifically prove either, because science is saying XXXY, and you're saying, oh, no. That's sex, that's not gender. So there's always going to be a degree of supposition, inference, belief.
I think Jerry, people love argument, right?
Yes.
Like when people, like like when people are like, oh, Virgin Mary, no, that was just artificial insemination. I'm cool with it, and they're just like, huh, blasphemy. I'm like, it's not. Like, it really is. Like y'all just want to argue. You want to make this into something that we can disagree upon, and
that's because we don't understand the tech.
Because you don't understand the technology, you don't understand what's going on. And I'm not trying to belittle the blessing either, but bro, it's really not that complicated. Like, it's just.
You can imagine if we told people we would be video chatting like this.
What happened?
You can imagine if we told people we'd be video chatting like this.
Right. It'd be like blasphemy. Nothing like that is happening. Like, that's just don't be no for frightened. That's what they would tell you. It's just.
For real.
Yeah. You see that point you made there? People love to argue. It's funny to me how for some of us, even who claim to be Christian and have the example of the fact that Jesus never got into arguments, it's almost like it's an ego thing to not just argue but prove a point. I've even seen Christians try to use, what is that verse where was it Paul who said, Pablo, always be ready to have a reason for your faith?
Mm-hmm.
People ask, right? And they try to.
But Jesus used to argue. He used to debate. That's what he was doing when the parents find him in the temple. That's what he used to do in the synagogue. I mean, that's what people did in the synagogue, in the Jewish synagogues. That's
was
what
it
they
really
did.
Arguing or debating as we do it today, though, or was it because even when I look at somebody, and this goes for both sides.
When Jesus says you don't know the scripture, or whatever, he's debating. When he tells the Pharisees about this, the Sadducees about he said you don't know the scripture or the power of God. That's debate.
You see that as
well. I understand that the person who's writing the story is snippeting and trying to send a message through the nature of and tell a story through the exchange. But I also understand the layout of the synagogue is a circle, and what used to happen in there is that people used to go there and discuss the scriptures, which is why you would have Sadducees and Pharisees, because they would be in there debating those things, and that's what they did. Jesus used to be in those environments and he used to teach in those spaces. So when you're teaching in those spaces, people raising their hand and asking questions and rebutting and arguing, you had a counter and proof. Now, at the end of the day, do you convince them? No, because some people walk away and say, nah, he's a madman. Forget him. I want to learn more. Right? So
I kind of see those things as more of like what we're doing here. And sometimes we'll discuss something and we'll start off with different views, and then I might come across to your view, you might come across, whatever the case is, right? We might come up with an entirely different view. I'm talking about the people who would go set up, in a particular place to like start this controversy and argument going. I don't necessarily see that as a.
Well, that's different.
Yeah, people love the drama. Right? People love the drama of it all versus healthy discussion. Because sometimes we walk away from here with completely different opinions and whatever.
Right, but I don't know that
she's not able to convince me of what she's saying. She can't provide any evidence to.
But the good thing is, I don't think any of us walk away from these conversations, even if we don't agree, seeing each other as less or
No.
looking
no.
at God as, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas when you look at some of these other environments, it's like, I don't know that you are approaching the situation that way has the end goal is that people are drawn to Christ.
Mhm.
And if that isn't the end goal, then claiming to be a Christian and saying, well, this is
Batman said even if that were true, I guess he was responding to us, disagreeing with his statement. They would validate that God exists. Science was a what and a why. Yeah, so the challenge is that you don't have a smoking gun. You have a strong case, but no smoking gun. You know, even with the best science, there's a lot of inference, a lot of good evidence, and you can make a case, but you can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
You can't prove anything that happened before our time without reasonable. I shouldn't say that. You can't prove much who beyond a reasonable doubt before our time. Like, and
Sharika, I don't know if you could prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt. Because and
I mean, listen.
not trying to go political, right? But
I was gonna say, I'm not sure if you want to bring me there because I completely agree, which is why I believe you shouldn't charge first degree for anything. But because
no,
man,
because like, I'm just sitting looking at the debates around, you see an assassination attempt on a president, a former president. And regardless of what you see, there's so much dissecting of facts, figures. Is there blood? Isn't there blood? Oh, look, there is blood, and one news outlet edited it out. So
and
believe
intent.
either way.
You can't prove intent. You don't know if I truly went there to kill you, or you, or you, or you, or just to cause argument. Like there's so again. Don't get me.
And what people will do, what you constantly see people doing is, if I have already made up my mind, I believe this. Any
Everything that
evidence that
comes
presents itself
is
that can
now
align to this,
I'm with it. I'm
Yeah.
with it. You know what I'm saying?
and then people will look at the same evidence and say, no, it aligns to
this. We watched this. We watched the same news report.
Yep.
We say the same live event on television. We
Yeah.
heard the same exchange of conversation. Just watched the same video and walked away with two different understandings of what just took place.
Christianity got 15 million denominations, non-denomination, upside down nations, and we all claim to be reading the same darn book, right?
You know what Lyle's take on that was? He's like, at the end of the day, all of the Israelites, those who were given a lot of trouble, those who weren't given much trouble, Joshua and Caleb, the only two that made it in, were all under the same pillar of cloud and pillar of fire. And everybody's looking at what's going on. Some people think post Red Sea and everything, God brought them out here to kill them because they didn't have quail and stuff. And same facts,
Some he called us to kill us. Some of us he brought us to rescue us. Some of us he brought us to punish us. Like everybody got whatever your foundation is. It's what's going to guide the information that
Right.
comes into your brain.
Your brain selects what's relevant based on upbringing.
And you have to make a conscious effort to say, this is what I'm going to believe.
Yeah.
And also recognize that there might be times in your life that shifts slightly to the left or extremely to the right, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Right.
This makes me want to believe that he's real intentional about this whole relationship thing, because if your belief is guided by this relationship and not just knowledge of facts and figures, then I can I'm going to say this way. You have a different kind of approach, mindset, and interaction with the things. You have a different basis. And I can validate whether you really care about me.
That part. Yep. Yep.
I could see where they're really interested in me, not what I could do for you, not what my position is, not fear of losing out, not because people is talk and do a good game, right? If I check all these boxes and do these things, you will give me this. It may not be about me at all.
Yeah. I'm just checking boxes to make sure I get what I need to get, right?
And if I could prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, then I'm not really incentivized to get to know you.
I'm doing this out of fear because I figure, look, if I don't do this, this dude really can Sodom and Gomorrah my rear end, right? So
Yeah, I don't know. I
Hey,
mean, I would say, from my standpoint and my belief, I would agree that science has given us enough evidence to prove to to make that to come to that conclusion. I would agree with that.
reasonable
but
without
this goes
being
back to what you said, Sharika.
But that's
What is
because I
reasonable to me and what's
subscribe.
reasonable to you is relative.
That's because I subscribe there already. So I
right. You
would,
already your baseline is over there,
yeah,
right?
I see evidence of some kind of structure and order and what they call what's the D word that is used? Is it the D word? Intelligent design. There's evidence of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely evidence of intelligent design.
Yeah.
And I'm not even trying to push it, right? But saying there's a higher power, it could be Zeus and his friends. It could be the sun god Ra. It
It
could
could be the
be
Watchers. It could be what was
it
that
could be
movie with
anything.
these? Yeah.
It's powers and principalities that are not identifying as human. Cool. Ancient Aliens is one of my favorite shows, and they always talk about, you know, these extraterrestrials.
And they make a good case.
Hey, let me tell you something.
They make a good
Let me
case.
tell you about these extraterrestrials. They out there, okay? You can't tell me they not out there. So, if you've never watched Ancient Aliens, y'all got to get on in it. But higher power just means bigger than us, right? And so it really is, where did you start? What's your baseline? And it is what it, and the Bible shows that there are multiple higher powers out there.
I mean, just we was reading about it in Daniel. I was going and asked a question about that myself today.
Mhm.
Daniel 7 verse 6. Courtney, since we go in there, Sharika.
I enjoyed reading Daniel.
You did?
Yeah, I did. Funny enough, when I first started reading the Bible, I liked Daniel and Revelation.
I find it hard to read. The first couple of chapters are nice, but it's get hard to read over time.
Yeah.
All right. So just verse 6.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, go to
Daniel was
Go to-
seeing stuff.
go to 14.
6 to 14.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. After that, I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads and was given authority to rule. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had a large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. As I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, the hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheel were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. In my vision, at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed.
So, first
Yeah.
question that I have is not the one that I intended to have. Not the one I have written down is to the what we were talking about with proven and existence. The imagery here about the beasts are figurative, right? They're meant to represent various things.
Mhm.
Could that also be said about the Ancient of Days sitting on a throne in the same passage? Do we jump from figurative to literal? And how do we know? Now, I'm only asking that question because we establish certain things to be facts. But sometimes the things we establish to be facts are filtered out based on our belief system from even before, right? If this is figurative, why are we deciding that this is literal? Why is this whole court scene not just as figurative as this lion with wings? Why? And how do you prove that? How do you know? Because it was a vision that the man was having.
Yeah.
So he moved from a figurative lion to a real God.
Yeah.
Did he? I don't know. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm saying how belief systems are generated.
Yeah.
There's inconsistencies, and we are selective in how we pull it out. Now, I'm not saying that it is figurative, and I'm not saying that it's not. We're not getting into that today. My point was just proving things beyond reasonable doubt is challenging because of dynamics like this. So that's level one. Level two is my question: Who was given all this authority away?
Mm.
They said, and it was given authority to rule. By whom?
By God.
By God or the court?
Somebody got to vote that in.
Mm.
Not
Was
vote
it
in.
executive
Well,
action, or was it, consensus by
It
the court?
almost seems to suggest
Well-
it's the court,
Huh?
It almost seems to suggest it's the court.
Well, okay. I guess the only reason I was saying God is because, like earlier in Daniel, he was talking about how God puts people in places and He's in control of who's in what.
Yeah,
So
I read
that's
8,
where
7,
my
and 8 before 5 and 6. I did
Huh?
read 7. I did
Yeah.
read 7 and 8 before 5 and 6 because that's how it was written.
Oh yeah, I read 5 and 6 first. Yeah, I did it the other way. So yeah, that's why I would say.
But even if he were to put certain people in certain places,
Mhm.
they still got to agree to, as a court, to abide by these general rules of
What, like engagement or how they?
I mean, it's similar to our current government, right? You put people in place. They tell them there's
That's a good point.
executive orders for a reason because I can choose to not do this.
Right. Because as 9 opens up, as I looked, so I'm assuming it could be a change of scene. The thrones were set in place, so he's watching all of this get organized, and there's multiple thrones. So we're assuming that there's levels of
Hierarchy.
right,
Mhm.
exactly. And then the Ancient of Days took his seat, probably a seat of
He's a chairman. He's a moderator.
He's King Arthur and the Knights of Justice. We don't know, but there's some difference in the seat.
Right. There's something different about the seat. And it's like he took his seat. So it seems like it's a thing. Like it's significant. And then that goes into, you said the thrones. All right, here. But he goes into saying, okay, this is what he looked like. And
so here's my follow-on question, Courtney, where you were going.
yeah.
If it is executive action by the Ancient of Days, why does Jesus have to go through all this rigmarole? Why couldn't the Ancient of Days just issue executive action? If he's disputing authority as he feels, you take authority and you take authority, and I'm gonna give this to you, and I'm gonna snatch it back here, and I'm gonna give it there, and I'm gonna snatch it back here. If it's that, why he could not just give that to the one like the Son of Man? Why the Son of Man had to jump through hoops before he could get entitled to that authority?
I don't know if it's jumping through hoops. Like what Sharika said, it seems like there's
Jesus had to die before he could get that authority. He had to die. He had to come and pay some kind of penalty.
But there's a difference between...
But who's holding him accountable to paying the penalty? Right? If it's not the Ancient of Days, I mean, if the Ancient of Days can just executive action above the court, then he could just executive action.
But he can't, but he didn't.
It says the court was seated and the books were open. So there's everybody sit down and now we open up the book. This is the evidence, right? This is the evidence book, right? Is this what he's doing?
It's a court one.
Yes. There's a gathering of people of different hierarchical standards who seem to have agreed to the higher nature of the Ancient of Days.
Well, at least a functional role.
So when I say higher nature, I mean more so we agree that their final word could be higher than ours.
Potentially. Okay.
But could be. Now, like I relate this to the House and the Senate, right? They gather, the president can say, I want something, and they can be like, not happening, right? Like, or they could say, is happening. Or the president could say, presidential order is happening regardless if y'all want it to happen or not, right? I think one of the reasons why this had to go down is because if the Ancient of Days use the power that they know he has, then there's another argument of you're just doing whatever the heck you want to do around here. And then it doesn't give the chance to choose for you to be in the seat that you're in. This balance of power thing is important. Just because this is your son, that's cool and all. But we have some level of rules of conduct around these parts.
Exactly. If we have these rules of conduct, and by we, I mean that
we've agreed
so that
on
society,
right?
That community, that existing community has those kinds of things. Then who's giving out the authority? Yes, the person sitting in the chair might say, "Make it so," but is he doing it without? And so I'm thinking about, and I'm just going to bring, because the next story, so thing about Daniel is 5 and 6 chronologically happens after 7 and 8. Right?
Okay.
It's written 5 and 6 and then 7 and 8. But 7 and 8 happens
That's it.
Before. Right?
Okay.
And if you do the history, it's a simple, but in 5 and 6, after this talk about what's that? That these can just in 5 and 6 though, the king of the Medes and the Medes and the Persians was bound to the laws of the Medes and the Persians. So once he exacted the law,
he had to abide by the law.
He was bound by the law and couldn't because that's how we establish, right? And I'm wondering if there's a similar kind of thing. Yes, you have the authority to make this law, but once you make this law, everybody had to, everybody is subject to it,
including yourself.
and these people knew that, and they manipulated it. they
Mhm.
they leveraged it to their advantage,
Yeah.
right, to get what they wanted, and he was stuck because of the system that existed. And I'm wondering if similarly, this authority that's being dished out is being dished out. Yes, he is sovereign and over, but he's choosing to be bound by the collective.
I think it's funny. He's kind of stuck.
But Jared,
I mean-
question, doesn't it? I'm just thinking there seem to be a couple of places in scripture where it implies that there is this, it's the 4 and 20 elders and there's some council, and when they meet, even in Job, where
I was
before
Revelation.
Lucifer was banned fully, he came up, and then there's even an implication that we will
Rule
rule over some of God's other creation with him post millennia and all that. So it seems like
22.
there's always some sort of governing body and this, almost legislative approach with which he tries to run all the affairs of the untold universe, right? And I guess it demonstrates his, not just his authority, but how important his law and structure and all of that.
Good.
Yeah.
So let's assume that there is a legislative authority and they giving out authority, right? Why they would give such a beast such authority?
I kind of think of it like the whole scenario, even with Nebuchadnezzar or with Pharaoh, where God allows them authority, gives them authority towards a particular end, which is usually salvation of them and of us.
But
Because
did you
he
see what he said
understands
about Nebuchadnezzar? Nebuchadnezzar could have killed whoever he want, whenever he want, however he want, and nobody couldn't challenge him. Not even God. God wasn't even getting in that. If he have the authority, if you want to do that, I've given him that authority. Now, what that say about the God that you serve?
There's a bigger picture.
You don't need to be in the mess of everybody's business.
You only show up when the man get prideful,
Right, like
That's
seriously.
the only time God show up, when the man get prideful. Otherwise,
because
he
the man forgot who gave him the authority that he's wielded and built all this great stuff. So it's like, which is the challenge for us as well, right? When we pride, we jump out our whole self and decide, we're doing this, we're doing that. God, what? And he had to remind him.
I tell people all the time, stop mixing up God and your everyday foolishness. He ain't even there. He ain't paying y'all no mind. There's levels to this. I got other things to do, right? Like, just govern thyself for now. Call me when you actually need some level of authority.
Wow, look at you.
Right?
No, but that's almost like how people blame the devil for their own. They're just being indisciplined or any number of things. It's the devil made
It's
me
the
do
devil.
it.
I tell people all the time, Lucifer really only responsible for like 3 things. Everything else, that's y'all. Like, it's y'all. Like, cut it out. Leave that man out of this. He out here minding his business. He roaming to and fro, doing what he feel like doing.
So you're saying, so just to clarify, so you're not saying he's not there. You're just saying he's not intervening in everything that happens.
Me?
Right? Yeah, you. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's present. I think I look at it like there are times that, like, me and my brother used to argue as siblings. My dad is in the house. He hears the foolishness. Listen, they'll figure it out. When I feel something is going completely awry, and you know the sounds of your children, you know when something gets serious, or when somebody passing their place. Hey, but outside of that, y'all are smart enough to govern yourselves for right now. Stop acting like you aren't because you fear accountability. Just do what you do.
Not only that, I would go a step further and say, now that you are older, he not coming and getting involved in how you run in your house, because that's now your house, and he's taught you and trained you, and it's now your house, right? Now, if he needs to come in and step in for some reason, maybe he may choose to do so, right? If there's some kind of thing where he feels he needs to intervene, but for right now, she's grown, that is her thing. Let her do that as she deserves. As she
Gave her the tools for what she
Take
needs
it
to
even
do.
further. When I'm in her house, I kind of follow her rules unless I think they'll go against the larger rules that I told her, right? Like they can't, like, for instance, my mom knows generally
Is
we
she
observe,
on?
yeah, we generally observe the Sabbath differently.
Right.
I may be okay with someone coming to my home watching television. But if my mother is in my home, I'm not going to do it, nor do I want somebody else to do it. Even though she knows it's my home and it's a potential that it will go down there. The sovereign or the hierarchy of things here, I am going to say, hey, while I am, queen of this palace, the overall castle is kind of governed by the higher one here. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think there's that too that's at play. Which is why I think goes into the Job situation where when Satan, and I hate calling him Satan, it's such an interesting word. When Lucifer and God had this encounter, he's like, yeah, that's your territory, my guy. Like, I'll be there. But that's what you be over there. What's going on down there?
Yeah, Gerald says he allowed those nations to do what they wanted to do, but when they went off the rails, they did pay for their actions. Absolutely. But they didn't just pay for their actions. They paid for their actions when they became prideful. As long as they stayed humble, he stayed out of their business for the large part. And that's my question, really. If he is giving this authority to rule and saying, here, this is yours, do with it as you see fit. And then I go and do all these things. I start snatching up people and chopping off heads and whatnot. What does that do for your understanding of God's value system? If he will hand that kind of authority to somebody like that, knowing fully well what they're capable of. So that's what I was wrestling with when I read this. Like, who was handing all this authority, and why would you give those people that kind of authority and that kind of power over people?
Because we talked about this before. It's the community of heaven. You still have free will. If I take your free will from you, then my character is still challenged. There's still there was a threat out there about my rulership and my sovereignty and how I run things. But your free will allows you to do things within the guidelines, and if you step out of the guidelines, there are consequences to it. I'm going to allow you. And who's to say that on World XJF, they have a different set of way that they run things, but it's still within the confines of the community of heaven. And God is just like, yeah, I'm cool with that. It's no big deal to me. You still within the guidelines because you have free will to do what you have to do, that you want to do.
So what are the guidelines if Nebuchadnezzar could do what he did? Because that's what the scripture says. God didn't pull up Nebuchadnezzar for what he did until he got full of himself. And he had free reign to, if he wanted to make this rule that people do this thing, they die. Yeah, go ahead, that's you.
But even with the free reign and making the rules, he still couldn't kill the Hebrew boys, right? Throw them in the fire, he still can't kill them. So there's always, to me, there's always, I will give you authority.
That specific instance.
I know, but and that's my point. I will give you authority, yes, but it's an authority where there's a line of thus far, no further. And if you get excited and try to go past that line, you will mess around and find out, oh yeah, I can't do any and everything all the time.
Great.
Because I'm not God.
Interesting.
And that's why you think, I mean, if you look at it like some series I was looking at, they were talking about some of these serial killers. There's a lot of gruesome stuff they got away with, thus far, no further.
I was just wondering this whole giving of authority and
But it
allowing
it
people.
does seem counterintuitive to a loving, merciful God. It's like, you know, this man is about to mess things up.
And the whole 7 and 8, does he give authority to each one of these? He gave authority to what? This bear. He gave authority to this lion. He gave authority
Yeah.
to the bear. He gave authority to the leopard. Then this terrifying beast with 10 horns, he gave authority to him.
But I mean, it's like Cliff said, right? If you take all of that free will, that free choice away, then is it?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Because I mean, it's like
But there's-
we always question.
Jerry, there's so I hear what you're saying. Before you, let me clarify what I'm saying. Yes, people have free choice, right? And the lion could have done what he did. But it says, and it was given authority to rule. What you do with that rule is your free choice. But this authority that is given, that is not your choice.
Right.
You didn't take that authority. That was assigned to you. Because that's what was said in, to Lauren's point in the verse before with Belshazzar, or Belteshazzar, whatever his name is.
Belshazzar. Belteshazzar was
God
there.
says, your authority, this is what it says. Perez means that your authority over your kingdom will be taken away from you and given to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right? So you had authority. You didn't do right. I'm taking it and giving it to somebody else. So that's not free choice. His free choice was not to rule properly. That was his free choice. But the authority, is being doled out.
Right, but that goes back to Adam and Eve. He gave them authority over everything. The whole garden was theirs, essentially.
Jared, I'm
going to take them back once.
Nah,
I'm gonna say, Jared, I'm gonna give you authority to rule this kingdom. Now I know you're gonna screw it up. I know you are. So I already got a plan in place. Jerry is coming right behind you. He's gonna be the next one in authority. And I know Jerry's gonna screw it up because you're in a simple world. Here comes Courtney. Yeah, already got this thing set up because ultimately we are still marching. Ooh, that's a hard word to use. See, I gotta watch you because you take my words and use it against me. There's still a divine plan in place.
Okay.
Man, I'm over here just thinking about it. So you have the sovereignty of God, the sovereignty of his law.
So we assume, I think too, like the evilness of this power, like up front. Like, did they show up like that on the scene, just like that on the scene, or did that happen over time? Just like Adam and Eve, they were perfect.
So there's a challenge in your question. There's an assumption about what the evil is. Because we would say that we could assume, reading Daniel chapter 5, God gave him a high position, 5:19 or 18. Your Majesty, the Most High God, was good to your father Nebuchadnezzar. He gave him authority and greatness and glory and honor. Now, Nebuchadnezzar was not a Jew and wasn't following no Jewish laws. He wasn't circumcised. He used to drink heavy and eat plenty meat.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So he was not a righteous man, and he used to sleep with women left, right, and center. He had a whole harem. When anybody he wanted, he used to take, and if he didn't want them, he tossed them by the side. By some circles, that is evil. So did he show up evil? Did he show up right? Whatever it is, that wasn't enough to disqualify the man. Right? God gave him high position, verse 19. Then the people from every nation became afraid of the king. Probably why they're afraid of him, because he was a vicious man.
Vicious, right.
And he was a vicious man when God gave him that authority, honor, and a high position. Right? That's what it says. He gave him authority, greatness, glory, and honor while he was vicious, and people became afraid of him. That was true no matter what language they spoke. The king would put to death anybody he wanted. I don't like you today. Dead. in a lot of circles, that is considered evil.
Mhm.
That dream was evil. It was like, yeah,
Right?
tell me what I dreamed. What, sir? Hold
He
on.
spared anybody he wanted to. So he was issuing pardons as he want. I like
Yes.
you. What
Yes.
did you do? You kill 100 people? I like you. Come. And
Mhm.
nobody can charge him. Not even God was getting, hey, that wasn't right. He's sinful. Let him die. God didn't come and God leave him. Right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
He gave high position to anybody he want to. Or you thief the money? It's all right. Come. I still put you up here.
Mhm.
Understand? And he brought down anybody he want to. You just challenge me? Go downstairs. Go downstairs. You know? What's that you having in here today? Go downstairs. Like,
Mhm.
God didn't take issue with him until verse 20.
But
Heart became stubborn and proud. So he was removed from his royal throne. Not for any of the things that went before,
Mhm.
but for that.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
His glory and honor was stripped away from him. And it's not until he recognized that the Most High God rules over kingdoms and puts anyone he wants to in charge
Mm-hmm.
that he get back what he
Mhm.
was. So
yeah,
I say all that to say that to answer your question, we would have to describe what is evil in God's sight. And is it
Right.
evil to elevate people and kill people, or is it
Well,
evil to be
before him, there's many stories of things. It's like, why did God let that happen? Like,
Well, they were. We're talking about
Just one
a
question.
promise. Go ahead.
Sorry, just one question.
Go ahead.
Didn't after the whole eating grass and all that, and he came back to his senses, wasn't he a changed man after that? Or
in terms of his humility and recognition of God? Yes. But we
did he
don't know
continue
that.
doing the same craziness?
We
I don't
have to
know.
check the history books. I don't know
Because
that.
it
I don't
almost
know that
seems
he
like
became more
God allowed what
compassionate.
he allowed in an attempt to, like I said, to get to his salvation, for want of a better term. Right? So I don't know.
I guess what I'm getting to is how we defining evil and how we defining it on God's terms, and what is the things that God is really concerned about and giving paid special attention to. What are the
Right.
things that are problematic for Him? What are the things that, in your authority, as long as you are subject to me, He lets you do because it's yours to do as you deal with? And what are the things He's like, hey, nah.
but it's not even just. I don't even think it's just pride, because there's plenty of prideful people in authority, and he ain't wiping nobody out or kicking nobody out of positions and places.
Oh, I mean, in 20, in a different version, NIV says heart became arrogant and hardened with pride.
Mhm.
And we come back down to, was that 21?
Mhm.
He, until he acknowledged that the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and sets over them anyone he wishes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So,
humility.
so come back to what I was asking again. God being sovereign, his law being sovereign. Like these are things that it seems like is a constant where we go back to the Adam and Eve. Somebody had
Mhm.
mentioned that earlier.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
was that issue with Adam and Eve? What was that sin?
Oh God!
You got a point there.
Look, the grass becomes greener.
Well, we're also talking about the promise that God made Abraham. You know, Isaac and Jacob and his descendants, man. You know, there will be a remnant. So yes, there were nations acting outside of his commandments, doing their thing. And even in God's plan to make sure that there was a remnant, it was like, okay, here, this is who you're going to go under rule of, because you're going to make an impact in some way, and you're going to get passed on to somebody else because you're still getting punished for the stuff that you did. And those jokers ain't trying to listen to me anyway. But I'm gonna show them through you all to give some type of evidence that, hey, I exist. I've been trying to get through y'all before. Y'all ain't been listening. Okay, cool. Leave you to your reprobate mind. But here's another example to let you know that I exist. Let me pull these jokers from the fiery furnace that you made. Let me pull this joke up out the lines then. And then you still gonna turn around and say, I'm God. I created all this stuff. This is all the stuff I do. Okay, kapow. Eat this grass.
And I warned you first. I
Yes.
told you it was coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And then his grandson, or what is it, grandson, turns around and acts like a fool.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing children of Israel did. You know, one king, everything's going well. We in cahoots with God. Next king, we buck wild again.
That's facts. All right, like in Judges, it was like there's those periods that everybody was doing what they thought was right.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes me continue to wonder about the things that that are important to God and that He considers problematic, and not necessarily the things that we give a lot of attention to.
Jared, maybe this is like what Sharika was saying earlier with the plant. We getting into minutia, but the thing that is most important to him is salvation. And so there may be things that we could get into that he allows, and he's allowing that because at the end of the day, he wants the person saved.
Each and every one of them.
I also want to take it a little further.
Mhm.
I think the allowance is different by person because of the fact that the relationship is there. I think, Jared, you mentioned this years ago.
Yep.
God may require stuff of you that he doesn't require of me. That may feel unfair, but I know Jared get himself into that. Salvation is up for discussion, right? Like, and Sharika get herself into it. It ain't gonna change the slice of bread on a Tuesday, right? Like,
Yeah.
so from the outside, it's like, oh my gosh, he has his people running amok, and he's kind of like, people's fine. They ain't going away. Like, it's just whatever.
That's like Jared. You know, there's some people who it seems like they could do. I mean, even not like Peter and Judas. On the face of it, it looks like Peter did this thing, and he was like, Judas did this thing dead, and he technically died twice, right? Because he's just about to die, and then right. And some people might be like, but isn't that unfair though? Because Peter was cutting off people's ears, cussing people out, and it's like, it's almost like he's, I don't want to say playing favorites, but again, from the outside looking in, it's like,
But he's not playing favorites. Like if you let the story play out, right?
And not only that, I know my kids.
like you said that earlier, right? You and your brother could be arguing. Your dad is like,
yeah, fine. Like I always tell them, my mom says this to me when she's like, when I was little, she's like, you tell me that Sharika was rude to you. Most definitely. Let's not even talk about it. That's exactly what she's going to do. If you tell me she lied to you, I know my kid. She doesn't fear you enough, right? Like, and so it's like, I know my kid. Like, you can cut off as many ears as you want, Peter. I don't really, grand scheme of things, this looks kind of crazy. But I know my kids. Like,
so I'll go add on to that, leveraging David and Saul to make the same point that you're making about Peter and Judas, and now Nebuchadnezzar. It appears that his real concern is how your heart posture is informing what you decide to do in terms of that whole pride and arrogance thing, and how it's informing your actions. Like Jerry said, on the face of it, David was more evil than Saul. By our standards and definition of evil, Saul was righteous and David was a sinner.
one of the best to do it.
I got a thought on that too, because David wasn't the one from his parents' household. He wasn't the one that they thought they would pick from the flock of sons. He had a bunch of sons.
Yo, you know what always strikes me with that story? How his father like literally forgot about it.
Right. You mean
I'm trying to say.
And someone is like, there must be another one. He's like,
it can't be that
yeah,
one.
there's this one.
I got that one in the back. But ain't nobody paying
But
that
it
one.
can't, wait, and the dad says, but it can't be him.
It can't be that one.
Not him.
Yeah. So that I'm not trying to take a shot at nobody's parents, but I know some parents can be a little, what they say, delulu. They look like you don't know what You think you know them. You think you know them kids.
But I also think, Courtney, to the point that you're making, there were times where Jesus was very clear that some people he'll be like, I don't know you, right? Like we might share a gene, right?
Right.
But I really don't know you. So what I'm not gonna do is front like, oh, because I'm your father, I'm your daddy. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't really know you like that.
Right.
And so that's an interesting, it has to be, I think that's a good point. It has to be a two-way street, right? There's a level of honesty between child and parent by which it's governing how the outside world is treated. And the minute that one of those things are broken, to your point, Courtney, someone's living in the world of Delulu. Someone over there. And somebody's going to admit, yeah, I don't really know that person like that.
That's it. And
you only know these people or both individuals through the time that you spend, very intimate times together. I'm sure that if we were to say a saying, Jared could say, oh, Sam said that versus Julian said that. Right? Like, yeah. I think it just reminded me when it was online, you said like, what did you like about school? And Sam was like, nothing. Right? And he's very clear. I mean, nothing. Right? Like, that's my final answer. There's no question that someone said, oh, Julian said nothing. You'd be like, nah, you're mixing the two. There's no way. The other one. There's the other one, right? Like, don't let him lie to you. But that's the relationship that I think God, when the books get open, right? And because some of us are going to be like, yo, how the hell did Sharika get here? Because I'm going to be like, dang, how did I get here? What up, homies? Right? Like, there's going to be that. Yeah, you see that relationship thing? That is going to justify how she got here because of this level of intimacy. Because from the outside, she's a mix of Esther and Delilah. But from the inside, that's my homie. You know what I'm saying? Throw a little bit of Rahab in there too, because I kind of like her just as much.
That's why you can't write people off, or you can't write people off or crown them.
Yeah,
you can't.
I like that.
Good.
You can't. You really don't have enough evidence. You don't have enough beyond reasonable doubt to do anything with whatever you see me doing. Because one thing I'll never forget, no matter how vulgar DMX was, he's one of the best to ever pray of our generation. That man was moving when he was praying. Okay, he was talking to God. I don't care what nobody say. Like, argue with your mother.
Yep.
Gerald says, I believe God promised Abraham his people will be numerous as the sand, but remember that's over time. He's trying that sand all day long. He's holding that sand, and there's a lot of sand.
And also, I don't know how many people ever been stuck in a sandstorm around here. When the sand starts to move, the sand you once had, it ain't here no more. It's gone over there. You have new sand. This is your new sand.
Man.
Okay.
Man. I just know a number of people who like to measure by acts, and they don't, because they can't perceive what's happening inside. They can't perceive that God is at work in a situation that doesn't look
the way they want it
to.
And they don't perceive that God is using a whole different measuring stick.
Want the same measuring stick, then I can compete.
Well, I'm gonna say he's using the same measuring stick for all of us, but different than the one that we want to apply.
What I many people, because I find myself comparative every so often. I think everyone does eventually. We want the same parameter of measure in order to justify whether or not we believe this should or shouldn't happen to somebody.
Fair enough, but I'm thinking that some of his issues are the same for all of us: pride, arrogance, humility. Like that's what That's what tripped Lucifer up. When you think about Ezekiel 26, 28, one of them where they talk about the king of Tyre, his whole issue there was the same pride that we're talking about here with Nebuchadnezzar. One of the things that made Jesus faithful was his humility and meekness and subservience to, to the Father. Moses didn't make it into the kingdom because he elevated himself and said, must we bring water out of this rock? Yeah.
Is there a world though that we want these things to look the same across? I think going back to the original point of the plant.
In terms of the how, yes.
Yeah.
We don't see them. We see the hows as different, and he doesn't see them as different because the what and the whys are the same.
Like, I'm gonna say something real controversial, right? Diddy's no bigger sinner than me.
Yes.
It's granted at the end of the day.
He's just as selfish as I have been.
I just show myself.
I beg to differ. I beg to differ. Because he has said plenty times that he wasn't going to stop. So
can't stop, won't stop. You know what I'm saying? Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop.
He said the evidence shows he
wasn't
going to stop.
But Cliff, at the end of the day, I think, Jared, you said it within the first couple of years. All of us are differently because we're inherently selfish. But it's uncomfortable to know that could be in our same trial for the same sin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think sometimes we forget what we do is we look at the gravity in parentheses, right? The gravity of the sin, forgetting that the penalty or the payment for sin is all the same. It's death and blood. So regardless of it was a lie, a white lie, or
it's not just the penalty, Jerry, the sin is the same.
Well, yeah, sin is sin. But again, we like to construct a hierarchy and a whatnot, but God is saying, regardless of which sin it is, it's sin and I have to die for it. Mm-hmm. So if the outcome to God is irrelevant, then let me not say it's irrelevant. The outcome to God is the same.
The path may be longer or shorter, but the outcome is the same.
Yeah, he still had to go to Calvary and die for all of it.
And you still got to burn. But
you still got to burn.
I mean, consider that the first sin was eating fruit. I mean, the first manifestation of sin was eating fruit.
Yeah, for us. Yeah.
And then it became murder, and then it became evil all the time.
Right. From eating fruit. and is eating fruit a bad thing?
Fruit. It appeared to be eating fruit, but the eating fruit was caused by
the power of the vagina.
Well, how was it? Vagina didn't motivate her to destruct.
But he could have stopped it.
Yeah, he could have stopped it, and he did.
And he did.
He could have. Well, let's go.
And he was the one that got the rulings. But anyway.
Thing is the downfall of everyone.
All I want to say is that God created it, right? And called it good.
Good.
Right. That's what he said.
And then rested.
It is written.
And then rested.
Yeah, but he put it on the same level as everything else.
He rested in his greatness. I want y'all to know that. Rested.
I shouldn't say this, but my boy Bill did a stand-up about the creation story and said that Adam named her because he saw her and was like, "Whoa, man."
Yep.
Oh.
That's how she got her name, woman.
Indeed.
But yeah, I'm saying, if we go back to the original, they wanted to be like God. They didn't trust him, and and that was the issue. That was the thing.
Yeah.
That was a
And
temptation.
that was Nebuchadnezzar's thing, and that was Saul's thing. You know, and that was Moses succumbed to it a little bit. The only people who didn't really succumb to it was Jesus.
Mm.
Yeah.
Even David gave into it, and he started
Yeah.
to number the people. When he numbered the people, it wasn't the offense, wasn't the numbering of the people. It was me trying to own the thing instead of, you know. And the funny part is we all get saved now by submitting to the Lordship of Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's always the plan, though.
Yeah.
Bring us back under the lordship, because our forefathers decided to plot their own trail, start their own lordship.
Yeah. I'm looking at the temptation of Jesus, right? And obviously, I can see it quick. It's like in Luke as well, but see, the devil says to him, "If you're the Son of God," it's like twice.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "It is written." He didn't even acknowledge. He didn't even answer. I am God. Nothing. It is written. He's just like, yo,
Ain't got time for it.
nah, no. You're not even contesting that with him. It's written this. That's it.
Hey, Courtney, I'm gonna sound a little fanatical, man. But just remember when you're watching those shows, them jokers that's portraying us is not us. They not like us. They not like us, man.
Wow, really?
Just want you to know that. Just remember that when you watch this.
Good.
That's all I'm saying.
So noted.
You know that. All right. The last thing I had was well, that was it. These two were the same thing, and it was just a
Can I ask a question?
mhm.
It was something I was thinking about. Like, what's the lesson that one should take away from the 3 Hebrew boys?
What's the one lesson?
What is or whatever lessons? And even Daniel himself, like, one of the things that stood out was their fidelity to their faith in diet, in prayer, relationship. Like, they were like, nah, we don't need to talk about this. Like, we said what we said.
In that moment, in that moment, after a while, Daniel started eating the meat. Over time, he began to, but yes, in that moment, absolutely. I think there are a number of lessons. I don't think there's a singular one. I don't think there's a most important one, but there's all kinds of lessons in there.
Yeah, their whole journey.
I could tell you the one that's most profound for me.
Mm-hmm.
The God I serve is able,
Mm-hmm.
but if He doesn't,
Yep.
Yeah.
I will still be faithful.
Yeah.
That's a hard, that's a profound place to come to that I have not gotten to yet. But that place, that aspiration is my biggest takeaway from that story.
That's a relationship, man. That's a serious relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it because He's going to save me. I'm not doing it for the sake, for the assist.
Right.
Doing it because I believe, He asked me to do this, and I'm gonna serve Him. I'm gonna be faithful. I'm gonna be faithful to what He asks, and that I admire people who live there and live in that space.
Even like, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, what do you believe solidified their faith? Their faith like that? Did they have any tangible evidence that solidified their faith to say, yep, just because he said don't do it, I'm not doing it.
I think the experience with the diet and how it elevated them into the positions in the kingdom may have contributed to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are other experiences they may have had, because remember they were the ones who were brought into exile, so they dealt with the whole war on the city and whatnot and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
There were people who wanted to run away, and they're the ones who gave up. I'm sure they weren't the only ones. So the city nation was mostly unfaithful, but I'm sure in between there were people who were, and I'm thinking that their lives being spared, they're being brought here and then being put in this place to thrive in this foreign place, even though it was a thing, and then these allowances being made. All of those things may have contributed to that. May have.
I'm just alluding to the fact that that for we don't know, but I don't remember there being any angels, anything coming down to personally visit them. I don't remember any specific miracles happen. I believe a strong lineage and parenting and examples that continue to push that forward and speak, if you will, life. You know what I'm saying? Till they get to the point where they themselves are exiled and separated from, family and friends or whatever have you, other than themselves. To come to a point in time where you say, even if it don't happen.
Mm-hmm. And even like I guess what stood out too was like an unwillingness to compromise. Because even when those guys was trying to set up Daniel, he could have prayed in his head walking around. he could have, like, his usual routine was to stand at the window with the thing open where people could see it. They knew that about him, so they're like, if we could get him to say this, it was like they were looking for ways to get him, and they were like, one thing we know about Daniel, he gonna be praying right there. So this is the way we're gonna get him. And he could have been like, okay, Lord, you know it's me and you, I still love you, I'm here, whatever. He could have been doing that internally in his head, and he was like, nah, like I'm still gonna do what I've been doing. And I thought to myself, like, how many would I be able to do that?
Yeah.
The threat of death. Like, there was death he was facing. Cool. There was death they were facing on both accounts. Guard dead, just throwing them in the fire, and they're just chilling. I was like, that would have been my point to be like, this bring them back, because if they dead right here and they not dead right now upon entering, just go ahead and take them out. It wouldn't even have taken seeing 4 people in there, but it was just like the emphasis on like compromise, like what compromises am I making?
Yeah,
that is a spit in the Father's face.
Well, I'm gonna say, Lorraine, I like the blue mohawk tent you got going on. I think it's kind of cool. You move though. Your head moved. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The water above your head because of where the camera's cutting off.
Oh.
The water behind.
I mean, it might be a new look.
Watch out now.
I might think about it.
Mm-hmm. Anybody have anything else right quick? All right. Takeaways?
Anybody starting or what?
Let me start with you.
See, that's what happens. You speak up. You know what I'm saying? When you open your mouth.
Yeah. So let's just stay silent.
Right. I think I'm gonna take the last part of what we were talking about as my takeaway, if I can. I mean, because truthfully, that really made me think other than earlier when we were talking about the existence of God, y'all. I was like, I gotta hurry up and get on, man. I gotta hurry up and finish this and get on. But I'm going to take away. I need to have that relationship like the Hebrew boys did, because I mean, honestly, truthfully, to be able to say even if when you're facing certain death,
right?
like
Ain't no confusion.
you gonna die, and this ain't gonna be a
Reasonable
quick.
doubt.
This ain't gonna be a quick one. This you gonna. This is certain, and you say, yeah, look, my God can deliver me from this. It's not even a big deal. But even if He don't, I'm still not doing that relationship.
And with the fact of knowing Nebuchadnezzar and how he been moving, like Jared said, like you know you going. If he say he gonna kill you, you know you a dead man.
And he vicious too. He said, turn up the oven, make it 7 times hotter, and throw those hammers in there.
It wasn't Nebuchadnezzar the one who started that whole practice of beheading the enemies and putting them on like trees and on
Potentially,
stakes and
but
stuff throughout the city, so you know, yeah, this is what I'm.
I cannot confirm that with certainty. I'm ignorant.
I get you.
But it's potentially likely because, and if not, he took it to a whole nother level if it was him.
Yes.
If it wasn't him. How about you, Courtney?
Oh man, I think when we were talking about Daniel, and just thinking about that court scene, and we were talking about the issues with what was actually evil with some of these instances. Just gave me that thought process of what acknowledging God's sovereignty means, and for me personally, and what does that look like? And I guess for me, really just trying to recognize His will for my life. There's a belief in Him that comes to mind as we were even talking about what that is, belief versus knowing, and the evidence and so forth. I think even just for me now is like just focusing on God's on His character. I don't need to I have to let go of trying to manage all these details. You know what I mean? So I just want to keep that in mind, because I think sometimes, again, even myself get caught up in the minutia of a lot of things, and it's just really just acknowledging His sovereignty and how that plays out in my life.
How about you, Jerry?
There are a couple of things, but something you kind of said off cuff that really stuck with me was you can't write people off or crown them. I'm going to muse thoroughly on that.
I'm gonna go next, so I don't forget mine. I was trying to remember what I said. I remember you said that, and I was like, yeah, that's not what I'm going to take away, but it reminded me of what mine was. I'm working to not allow other people's, whether specific individuals or organizations or groups of people's understanding of God to box me into my experience with Him.
Dude.
I still am chewing and digesting the whole idea that God said, I'm gonna take you into the land filled with milk and honey, and you'll have houses that you didn't build, and paint this lovely picture of this new place that they're going into. And He said, yeah, go in there and kill all them people and take their stuff. That's yours, because I just give it to you. And I'm like, What? That don't go with the God I know. God ain't gonna give you somebody else and tell you kill them off and take it. God don't do that. Not a loving God. But that was the plan from the beginning. Take their stuff, it's now yours. They didn't want it, they didn't handle it right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving their stuff to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still chewing on that.
That was judgment, man.
Fair enough. But when God was telling them to take their stuff,
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't telling them execute judgment.
Was he?
He was leveraging them to execute judgment.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Yes.
He wasn't giving them a judgment, hey, here's a belt, beat them.
Mm-hmm.
He
Right.
let them do this, and by doing that, you will execute judgment for me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Agreed.
Enter Nebuchadnezzar, right?
And then Nebuchadnezzar came back and did it to them.
Yes.
Right? And he called Nebuchadnezzar his servant.
Mm.
And so those ideas are causing me to be challenged in my understanding of what God is doing and what is of God and what is not of God and where God is and where he isn't.
Mm.
And so my takeaway is not to allow other people's understandings of him to box in my experience with him.
Okay.
I feel that.
He might be moving in something where if you tell it to somebody else like that, they'll be like, nah, that is not God. And I'm like, I am 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
I believe. I don't know for sure, but I believe.
That.
And that would be, and it'll be very consistent with what I've seen him do in other species.
Yeah.
So,
Judgment is coming for the world soon.
Lorraine?
I don't know if I have one.
That's okay.
No, because like it's more like questions. Like
What question you taking with you?
like I've been stuck on Daniel. Like what quality or aspects of your relationship with God would give you the kind of unmovable faith to face death and not flinch. Like,
Let me ask you this question. What quality do you need to have to not cheat on your husband? In the face of the most severe temptation?
it sound weird. I would, for me, my love, care, and concern for him.
Exactly. And that is the answer to that question. The only thing that keeps you is love and care for the other person.
Thanks for giving me a second.
But here's the thing, though, right? Like, here's the thing. So this is where I'm stuck because did Peter not have love, care, and concern for Christ when he denied him?
Not more than his love, care, and concern for himself.
Correct.
And he went
But you
away
don't
and
know,
realized.
but you don't know it. So I can say that, right? But you don't know it till you're in a situation and you
Until it's tested.
like, oh dang. I thought I had it, I don't have it.
So here's the interesting thing. When James talks about trials and temptations in James 1, the word that there is in there is approving. It's approving. Faith allows you to prove whether you love. And then you say, oh, I don't love as much as I thought I did. I have a chance now. Now that I know, I can shore that up and mend it, fix it, and fortify it some more. Which is why we started today. The relationship is the key thing, because that's what it is. That's what keeps you.
I'm gonna
But it's so
say that.
sad because it's like if if we compromise on a day to day not facing death, a lot of us like I imagine that to be very heartbreaking, like for God. Like you know what I mean? Like all these people on this planet and there's left, right, and center. Like it may not be the obvious, like I said, you know, you could be like, well, I pray, you know, it's just in my head, you know. The
Would
boss
you
man
would you take that from your husband? Right.
would I take what?
That same kind of reasoning. Well, you know, I
Oh,
no, you wouldn't, right?
I
Exactly.
would not.
No, you wouldn't exactly.
Exactly.
No, I'm going to say I'm going to say that's secondary. I've always said it's the commitment that I've made to God for you.
Mhm. On the strength of your concern for him, your regard for him. Why would you commit to him if you don't care about him?
No, I'm saying I know ultimately that was you're saying, but your question was what will keep you from cheating on your.
Mm.
I said it's my commitment that I gave to God for
Or
you.
to God, not to her. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
That kind of it. Okay.
Because my care and concern for you can wane.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
dare say though
Facts.
that your
I
care and
agree.
concern for
I
God
agree.
can win where you
Yeah,
might
but
mess
there's
up,
time.
and then as you grow and you realize that this is about this person and it's also about God.
Yeah.
When that care and which is what transformation is really about, right?
Yes.
Because
I guess
David was a man after God's heart, but there was a point in time where he was too concerned with
Yeah, that's true.
bring her come.
which is so he's so into
Bring
it's
her
like
come, send him.
Right. But
it's like
God
I
was
want
like,
to
go
run a
ahead.
racket and I'm saying to Jared or Cliff, yo, organize the racket for me.
I got you. But Laurie, my point was though that we understand it in our human relationships.
Mhm.
It's not something we have to give too much thought to in our human relationships. Yet we come up with all these questions when it comes to God. But it's really that simple. And he allows us to live it. He allows us to live it as a child who has to choose why he's going to obey his parent or be faithful to what the parent asks or have concern about what the parent is important to. And then we have the parent to understand that dynamic of why would what do you want your child to respect you and honor you and love you, but why? Because they care about you, not because they're afraid of you, but because
Right.
they actually
Right.
care about you. So you see it from both sides. And then you have these other types of relationships where no, if you're not faithful to me, then you don't care about me. And I understand that dynamic. Like I know that that's what it is because I know, at least for myself, I'm speaking in your space,
Mhm.
that because of how much I care for you, I would never do that to you.
Mhm.
The challenge is we don't make that connection with God. I don't know why, but we don't.
Mhm.
He's,
Mhm.
he seems to be so abstract that we try to give it a whole lot of more other things, and
Mhm. Mhm.
it's really that simple. Do I appreciate what he did for me? Do I appreciate who he is to me? And that's why I'm, taking it out of love and, using the word agape. Do I have active concern for him because of who I perceive him to be and what is important to him? Do I even really care about that? And do I care about it more than I care about me? That's the kind of thing that would keep you faithful.
Mm-hmm.
I can admit, and a lot of us don't want to admit that, no, I don't love him like that. I'm working on it, but I don't. And I think that's the first step, is recognizing, no, I don't. I love me more. And so help me, Lord, to love you more becomes my prayer at the very least. I, I, I don't know if I love him enough to to walk into 7 times hotter. I watch him men falling down trying to throw me in. I don't know if I love him like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that the ropes got changed away, like just let's not.
So typically, that's the only thing that keeps you, right? Like, all these other motivations, heaven, streets of gold, no more sickness, no more death, seeing my mother, them when the fire gets sometimes sort of, you ain't really thinking about that. I'm doing nice. Right?
This sterling silver's all right over here. It's okay. Not so bad. Not so bad. We
Brass
polish
can
it
be
a little bit.
appealing right now.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And that's where we started. That's where I'm starting to see that whole faith thing is important, because do you love me and trust me enough to leverage what you do know about me to be faithful to me? Do you? Well, we'll see. And then we'll open the books and see.
We'll see over and over and over again.
And we'll watch in the books what the record was, what the record shows.
Yeah.
And I would say, Nebuchadnezzar shows us that it'll look different for each of us, right? You can look at Nebuchadnezzar and say, no, it's not him because he was killing people. Or it's not Busta Rhymes because he was cussing in his song. He didn't sing a gospel song. Like, he didn't put a prayer on his record like DMX. So it's not Busta Rhymes. Busta Rhymes don't have no respect for God.
Plus, he's a 5%er. Yeah.
Right? And then you reach and you realize he was serving God more than you. While he was cussing, and God was looking past the cussing because he saw his humility and his posture and his service and all of that in what he knows. I'm not saying that I know that about the man. I just use him as an example. But yeah, I hope that answered your question, because it's one of those that I wrestled with for a long time myself.
Cool.
All right. I was trying to stall for the bishop, but she's still on her call, so I was hoping she would walk right back in to give her takeaway and close us with prayer. But I feel like she's hiding, waiting on us to pray and push it up. No scene. Jerry, you pray for us to close today?
Sure. Father God, we thank you again for another productive session of going through your word, asking some hard questions, coming to a better understanding. Our prayer is just that we become the people who love you and care for you enough to face any challenge, any situation, and trust that you will be faithful, and that regardless of the outcome, we in turn stay faithful. It's my prayer in your name. Amen.
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 All right. We are on again. What's new in calendar? Continue.
Let's see, 20.
It's 18th.
18th, yeah, it's the 18th.
And there are only 4 Fridays, so yeah. So the 18th and then the 1st of November. So all right. It was good, guys. I enjoyed the conversation. It was good seeing you all. Thank you to those who were in the chat. Looking forward to chopping it up next time and hearing more about your travels and your through Daniel or I'm looking now. We're still like in the middle. When you get to the more complicated stuff in the end, I want to hear how much fun you had there. That's the story of the journey.
Yep.
All right. Peace and hair grease, guys. See you on the, what did I say?
18th.
18th. Later. Bye.